Welcome to the new episode of our podcast on the spot, Zooming in the World. My name is Jovan Jovanovic. I'm former Serbian ambassador to Indonesia and ASEAN. And today's topic is a new NATO Secretary General, former Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, and the challenges he and the NATO would face during his term. And today I have a great pleasure and honor to host Mr. Suleyman Aslami, who is a member of the Council of the City of Amsterdam and who used to be a parliamentary staffer for defense and foreign policy during Mark Rutte's third cabinet. He was also a head of the Liberal D66 party office in the European Parliament. He also has experience in the foreign ministry of the Netherlands. So thank you, Mr. Aslami, for kindly accepting my invitation.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Jovanovic.
Since you worked in the parliament during the third Rutte's cabinet, you are familiar with the way he operates, with his modus operandi, and how, in your opinion, how would it affect his position as a NATO Secretary General? For example, the longest-serving spokesperson of NATO, Ms. Oana Luhescu, mentioned that the Secretary General shouldn't be only a secretary, but also general in a political sense, and Mr. Rutte has a vast, rich experience with dealing with also in the European Union, but also with dealing with the complex governments, coalition governments in the Netherlands. Would there be some kind of continuity with the Jens Stoltenberg and at the helm of this risk-averse bureaucracy? I think 1,500 people work in NATO, or he'll bring some fresh air and shake up the things.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I think what if we look back, what you could say about Mark Rutte is that he was a very pragmatic man. I think always very well prepared. He always knew how to wheel and deal with different people. Very energetic, always a good spirit, and yeah, I think having said that, he was also a very normal guy. I think one of the things that I remember when he was described or announced by I think it was a professor in Kazakhstan where he had a visit. They announced him as Mr. Normal, and I think that's a very accurate way of describing how he is how he was as a prime minister. But having said that, obviously being the Secretary General of NATO, requires perhaps a different kind of a Rutte, and I think we've seen a bit of that during Trump era, where he had to deal also with all kinds of challenges within NATO. So I think overall he has a very clear vision of what he thinks that is needed, definitely in the, let's say, short near term. I think he explained his priorities quite clear. To have the capabilities to protect against any threat. The support of Ukraine is on top of his priority list. By the way, this was also the case when he was prime minister. From a financial perspective, but also from a military capabilities perspective, the Netherlands has been, I think, from the beginning, from the start, one of the biggest supporters of Ukraine, for all good reasons. But I think there is also another reason what makes the Dutch perspective, let's say, a bit more special. And that has everything to do with MH17, where almost 200 Dutch lives were lost due to, let's say, Russian aggression in Ukraine. So there's also that sentiment, and I know for a fact that event was the MH17 horrible event was one of the most shocking events for Rutte's period. So overall, Ukraine is definitely on top of his list. But let's also say the growing challenges globally for the Euro-Atlantic security. It is, the world is getting, let's say, getting more and more challenging from different sides. We see the Middle East now, the rising power of China, and then we have obviously Ukraine. So there is a lot to do, and I think Rutte is the perfect man for the job. He served more than a decade as prime minister. He knows all world leaders. He knows definitely the European leg of NATO. He has dealt with Trump earlier very effectively. So yeah, I think yeah, the best man for the job.
Well, it's obvious that Rutte doesn't have any honeymoon because of these all crises and challenges you mentioned, especially the Ukraine. And you mentioned that he has been a staunch supporter of Ukraine, and it looks that is the focus of his first 10 days in office. And he visited immediately last week Kiev, met with President Zelensky, and then yesterday there was a tripartite meeting in London with the British Prime Minister and again Ukrainian President Zelensky. So, can you say a few more words about maybe this meeting? What Rutte and NATO could bring to the table? We know these requests from Ukraine to use NATO's long-range missiles to target targeting military targets in Russia. So maybe a few more words about yesterday's meeting.
Yeah, well, I think that's a very interesting crossroad that we are right now, right? So you see there is there is some limited gains on the ground from Russian side, but there is at let's say a huge cost from also the Russian side. They're paying with a lot of lives to gain a little territory on the ground. On the other side, there are many challenges also from the Ukrainian side, and the discussion around long-range weapons and the use of it from the Ukrainian perspective against Russia will in the end be also, I think, ultimately a decision from individual NATO members to decide what let's say the red lines are and whatnot. I'm interested. I'm very curious to see how how we continue and what sort of the next phase we get in this conflict, and how Rutte balances between, on one hand, ensuring the safety and security of Ukraine and ensuring the interests of Zelensky, but also on the other hand, making sure that Zelensky has the capabilities and the ammunition and everything he needs financially also to continue on the ground. I think the latter is also an important one, the financial aspect of the war. I think there was a majority in the Ukrainian parliament that accepted to raise, let's say, the war tax in Ukraine, and this will also affect Ukrainians. So on that level, that the war will be felt also financially. So it's a very interesting and I think a challenging next phase. And I guess what makes it even more challenging is the fact that we have the elections in the US. So that I think that's sort of looming over all this. Looking forward to see what happens there also, but that will determine, I think, also let's say the next phase.
Mm-hmm. We'll go back to this issue of the US election a little bit later, but you mentioned many of these external challenges Rutte and NATO face, and just on Monday, this military annual nuclear weapon, let's say nuclear weapon exercise will start. That was noon in Belgium and the Netherlands. So it's a way of containment, part of the containment policy towards Russia. But let's speak a bit about the internal challenges Rutte will face. One is related to the skepticism and the worry from the, let's say, eastern flank countries, like the Baltic countries, Romania, the countries that are perceived as potential frontline countries. How Rutte will address these challenges? That there is a challenge with the really strained relations with Orban, with Hungary. Then also, still, I think 8 of the EU NATO members still not meet the 2% of GDP threshold on the expenses on the budget on the military expenses. So maybe a few words about these internal challenges Rutte will face.
Yeah, I think this is a very legitimate question and a challenge also, because in the end, the alliance is there because of all the members, right? And the internal dynamics are, I think, super important. I think the fact that Rutte has been a prime minister for more than a decade, knowing all, well, not all, but most of the heads of state, knowing how to wheel and deal also on, let's say, EU level, makes it that he knows well to balance and understand the different perspectives of all these allies. I think on the eastern flank, the Baltics, they have all the right to also raise that awareness and to flag their interest. And I think Rutte is well equipped and knows these sensitivities. On the other hand, he had let's say a difficult relationship with Orban, also with Erdogan, where he needed to to go and to reassure and realign with Erdogan before getting elected as Secretary General, and the same goes with Orban. Orban was, I think, one of the latest allies, or the last ally, to stop the blockade and accept him as a Secretary General. So it's a lot of balancing, and I think having done that for more than a decade in Europe with a lot of other pressing challenges, I think Rutte will know how to wheel and deal. Yeah, the 2% is a difficult one, because we had to face this also in the Netherlands. We come from I think from far away, and luckily now the defense expenses are, let's say, a bit more on where they should have been, maybe 5 or 10 years ago already. But it has also to do with with the absorption capability of your defense, right? Of your personnel, of your capabilities. So it's not only cold hard money. It's also about what type of capabilities do you have? Do you have enough staff? Do you have? So I think there is also a bit nuance there. And being a prime minister and having dealt with this earlier himself, Rutte would, I think, understand the perspective of these countries, but I think he needs to pressure them also in order to ensure that once, let's say Trump is elected, that there is no reason for Trump to say, hey, what's going on? You guys need to pay, especially the Europeans, for your safety. On the other hand, there's a lot going on also on the European side. We have a European Commissioner for Defense. There are a lot of initiatives. So, I think it's a matter of time, but it's very pressing.
Mm-hmm. So you expect also to have place attention to also this coordination between NATO and the EU?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a must, right? Especially if you look also within Euro, Macron, but also other Europeans, they have felt left out when Trump was elected earlier. I know for a fact how things went back then. The sudden pullback from Iraq back in the days with the ISIS mission that was going on there. That really surprised a lot of European member states, and I'm sure they have not forgotten what that means. So the urgency is felt in Europe, and I assume they need to step up their expenditure and make sure that they put the money where the mouth is. But again, it's easier said than done. You also need the organization and the people to make that happen. But again, I think it's just a matter of time. We will get there sooner than later.
Going back to this overarching issue of U.S. presidential elections, everybody is waiting to see the results, and many in the NATO are wary of the possible return of Donald Trump to White House. But Mark Rutte, you mentioned that he had a very good relationship with him, and that he gained because of that his nickname Trump's Whisperer. And he's downplaying the importance of Trump coming back to power in the U.S. So, what is your view, and what is your view on the differences if Kamala Harris wins, and is Europe well prepared for both scenarios, or in NATO?
I think they should. So from my perspective, also from the perspective of my political party and where we stand, I think Europe really needs to be able to defend itself. We cannot rely forever on US. US has also different interests, and just from a geopolitical perspective, we need to step up as Europe. We need to work within NATO, and I think we cannot say that enough. Within NATO, step up and ensure that we are equipped to protect Europe and Europe's interest. Having said that, I think the experience that Rutte had before with Trump makes him well equipped to manage that potential policy shift from US if that occurs. He has the diplomatic flexibility to deal with that, to be let's say a bridge builder between Trump administration and also Europe. On the other hand, I do understand Rutte downplaying concerns at the moment around Trump, because he's not elected. So there is at the moment not a need to get all excited but we need to be prepared, and I'm sure that on a member state level in the EU they are working on scenarios, because we have to we've been surprised before, so you cannot allow that, and I think the risks are too high to let that happen again. But I think again, Rutte is probably the best man to be there on the job, and to also ensure that Trump understands the strategic importance of NATO also for the US, because let's be honest, there is also a big interest for the US to have NATO and to have the NATO alliance as we have it right now today, but also to have the European support from every angle, right? Military, financially, strategically, geopolitically. It is in the interest of US to have a strong NATO, to have a strong leg of NATO in the EU, and I'm very sure that Rutte is able to express that towards Trump. And having said that, it took also some time for Rutte to be a very pro-European defense prime minister himself, right? From D66, we have pushed a lot on that perspective within that cabinet back in the days, and looking back, you can see Rutte and Rutte's shift towards understanding the need for a European defense mechanism also within NATO is I think a perfect example of him understanding the sensitivities.
Mhm. Well, I think it's a perfect way to conclude this very interesting and insightful conversation. And is there anything maybe else that you would like to add at the end?
No, I just just think it's a very interesting time and a very crucial one. And I think we're lucky on the NATO side to have a person as dedicated as Mark. He's a very, very, very dedicated person, and yeah, looking forward to see what's next. Also on the other side of the Atlantic.
We are all looking forward to it. Thank you, Mr. Aslami, again for your time and for sharing your knowledge and experience. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.